in his showings to validate or invalidate this one showing. That sounded real weird, but hear me out. The first one is classic Loki, also being the god of stories, as he does tell stories and myths. He messes with everything within the reach of metaphor and lies, in which myths, metaphors, and lies are all stories of a certain degree. Loki, in his classic times, lies a lot and tricks people, the ultimate trickster, in which leads up to his act of the second category. Loki in the Agents of Asgard / Agents of Axis is still the normal Loki we have, because classic Loki is basically old Loki from previous iterations, but all these Lokis have the same conceptual and archetypal lore no matter the iteration which comes to play. He still plays the role of tricking gods, changing events through lies and all sorts of things, which messes with his narrative. What really points this out in Agents of Asgard is because it was dedicated to showing such relevance in his character, in which I do explain all this very well in my Loki video, and we'll link it below. This nature of Loki is what will cause him to be named the god of stories, as he kept lying to himself by changing the plot and script of his narrative beyond the writer's control, to the point he was caught between the narrative of truths and lies, the narrative of all narratives beyond the cosmic tree called Yggdrasil, in which Odin told him the Yggdrasil does consist of the villain and hero narratives, the archetypes of heroes and villains, and how their experiences unfold itself, creating events and manifesting itself in the broad scope of reality. Loki was caught between truth and lie, good and evil, hero and villain, in which he had to burn in his narrative, meeting his previous iterations, in which we see the so-called classic Loki, which I mentioned. We have Kid Loki, who is as powerful as God of Stories Loki in his transcendent version, and we see him embrace himself as not a hero nor villain, but as the true god of mischief. Him who tells great tales to suit his agenda, be it for the so-called concept of good and or bad, as he goes on to save the most important story of the Yggdrasil, which is that of the gods who truly own the multiverse. The true Yggdrasil, the Nine Realms, clash for Ragnarok, and he saves this standing beyond creation to challenge those who sit above in shadows and feed on the narratives of the true Yggdrasil. Loki just had to tell the story beyond creation, where they didn't exist and they ceased to exist easily. Then the third event of this true balance is when Loki got into the House of Ideas and comes in contact with likely an entire iteration of eternity within the halls of all-knowing, which is one of many sub-infinite doors that connect to the House of Ideas. Loki is called God of Nothing, in which, well, he wasn't good nor evil anymore, and stories work based on yin and yang, a specific balance. Anyone beyond such a marvel is actually boundless, beyond total conceptuality and reasoning, beyond maths and languages, beyond archetypal concepts that are not absolutely transcendental or transcendent upon each other. Loki was just a walking boundless god, same as Thor, but you can check my Thor videos, any video you see him featured in, to watch and grasp it. I will link it down below. But on the other hand, Loki was then sent to the House of Ideas, and before I continue, I have explained in the past why I think this is an iteration of eternity, likely the fourth cosmos who loves to wander and journey into mystery. For many that do not know, the Euphoria, the halls of all-knowing, which is linked through the omnipotent city and Asgard's library, are far from the many infinite layered realities beyond the Yggdrasil. Everything after that is called the mystery, the undefined partial, because truly it is mystery, and you see Loki is even taller relative in size to one of the iterations. To further justify this, Loki does say that time seems to have a mind of its own. The multiverse is layered upon several degrees of what time is, but time itself is eternity, just on varying levels, and within him also occurs such. The iteration tells Loki that time is the only true God, and if he cared to find out, Everything was planned as Loki is sent directly to the children of true eternity, which is the living tribunal in its truest form, and I have explained this so many times on this channel. Loki then is asked if he isn't still the god of stories, as the children explain further to him the necessary role heroes and villains play in the multiverse and how non-contingent they are based on their events or stories. Spider-Man being the OG of everything alongside Wolverine and Thor. Loki says he was born before them, so why do they have more? But Loki forgets his existence is something which he used to defy his necessity in creation as he goes on further adventures, which now leads up to Thor 2020 run, in which Loki is still the god of stories, but people try to claim because he is weaker than Thor, then Thor scales to the House of Ideas, and that's simply wrong because Loki has to live his experiences based on narrative lore beyond his power system so he can have more stories and become more necessary, which comes from the House of Ideas, and Thor must always be seen as above him or more necessary while he still has his powers, but I would say vary based on the situation. Just like Spider-Man is pretty much fodder until you throw him into a situation where he has to die but he won't die, or has to transcend and he will transcend. Loki is stronger than Thor, but in this narrative, is Thor's narrative focus at this point. He can't outshine him nor beat him, so any feat towards Thor from beating Loki here is an outlier, or Loki beating Thor, or Thor beating Loki, yes, is an outlier. Classic Loki has consistently been high autoversal. Every form of Loki beyond that has ranged from like baseline boundless to layers into it. Now, as for the Immortal Hulk, it's something similar but isn't. I picked these two characters because their concept is relatable but far apart. You see, Hulk is Hulk, but Loki isn't Loki. Hulk, no matter the body or host, will always be Hulk. Hulk does not change. His power just manifests itself and makes the beast stronger based on the story at hand, and of course that story includes anger, which is gamma radiation and blah blah blah. Basically, Loki varies based on power rather than individual, but Hulk varies based on individual and power, but the host in which the power comes to is the same Hulk we have always known, but could be different hosts. The Immortal Hulk can't die. If he dies, he basically will revive from the mere fact that Hulk can't really just die. I mean, nothing in Marvel actually ever truly dies. Loki has a metaphorical archetypal space where his iterations stay but can't interchange easily. As for Bruce, his iterations come out whenever he needs them, or even forcefully. The Hulk is really powerful. Immortal Hulk is actually the strongest Hulk so far and the weakest. Dude could get so drained he becomes an HIV Hulk. But when he is pumped with gamma, dude beats Absorbing Man. He helped fight against the one below all, and he is the direct son of Toba and Toa. He plays a cosmic balance of Golachab and Gabora, which a lot don't understand. Now, Toba Hulk is what everyone knows, but Toba Hulk is theoretically a thing. Toba Hulk is the one everyone knows, and Toba Hulk is theoretically a thing. It's said that Hulk is metaphor and Hulk is called Gabora or Golachab. The one above all, that's the opposite to the one below all, is literally just a realm of the outside, and people don't know this, but the far shore and unknown / mystery is above the outside realm. The one above all of the outside, which has said to use love and build with many hands, is direct reference to Toba, who hates and destroys with many hands. This Toba and Toa represent a whole archetypal concept of love and hatred to build all and destroy all. The Hulk lacking of father's love is in representation of love and hatred, as it costs Hulk so much tears and hatred towards himself, who looks like the one below all, but has love for his father, who he views above him, which he would never suspect, and would represent the one above all of love, and Toba as hatred. So Hulk represents this balance of hatred and love transcending beyond the body of the Yggdrasil's limits of stick with a side of conceptuality. Meanwhile, Toba, at this level below the Yggdrasil as Qliphoth, is absolute hate called the below place, and the absolute nature of love would be Kabbalah, who is absolute love, and the Immortal Hulk would be the absolute non-ideological balance of absolute love and hatred, and the one above all of love tells him he is his father and he is necessary. The outside of the one above all skills below the House of Ideas by far, that even an aspect of death, of the highest form of death from the true living tribunal, was holding the green door, which is the place of the one below all, like it's nothing, which speaks a lot about this. I don't think I have to say much, but the Immortal Hulk loses to God of Stories Loki in terms of passive hacks to power relativity. Hulk may throw punches, but it won't do shit, and that's if Hulk can perceive him to start with. Loki would just rewrite Hulk's entire narrative, same for Toba and Toa of the outside, because this narrative stuff in Marvel really varies. Some characters' narratives isn't more important than the normal superflow tier. Some get to the Nexus superflow tier, like Starbrand. Some get to the Ragnarok level. Some get to the outside, and some get far higher. But all are important. Well, if you found this video informative, then like, share, comment, and subscribe. And well, see you next time. Peace.